All right, so first question we're going to look at is for a parabola. And we know it's a parabola because one of the variables is squared and the other one is not. So whenever one is squared, one isn't, it's always a parabola. Now there's 4 different cases for the parabola, opening up, down, left, and right. The first thing we want to do is rewrite this equation so that it's y squared equals 4ax. Whatever number goes inside the parentheses, that is going to be your a value. So for this one, what could we put inside the parentheses for a? 5, yep. Okay, so that tells us a couple things. Our a value is 5, and a is the distance between the center and the vertex.
Yep.
All right, let's figure out the I'm sorry, a is the distance between the vertex and the focus. I said that wrong. A is the distance between the vertex and the focus. Which way is this parabola going to open? We have a positive 4, that tells us one thing, and we have a letter x right there. That tells us another thing. If this was a y and that was a 4, it would open up. But this is an x and that's a 4.
So it's opening right.
It's opening right. So the x tells you that it's opening left or right, and the 4 tells you that it's opening right because that's the positive direction. If this was a y and a 4, it would open up. And if that was a y and a negative 4,
Yep.
it would open down. Okay, so this opens to the right. So we know it's going to look something like that. And we don't have any numbers added or subtracted from the x or the y. So what does that tell us about where the vertex is?
It would be at 5, 0.
Well, we're going to look at, hold on, so I think you're thinking maybe about the focus. You're trying to figure out that, because the focus is going to be 5 units away from the vertex.
Right.
But where would the vertex be?
Oh, 0, 0.
The vertex would be 0, 0, because we don't have anything with a plus or a minus with the x or with the y.
Yeah.
All right, so now, here's your vertex. Here's your focus. Vertex, focus. The distance between the vertex and the focus is a units. What's a in our case? 5. So the focus is 5 units to the right of the vertex. What would be 5 units to the right of 0, 0?
5, 0.
5, 0, yep. Now, the directrix is an imaginary line over here that the parabola bends away from. Would the equation of this line be x equals or y equals?
Y equals.
So y equals would be for a horizontal line.
That makes sense. It's x equals.
Yeah, it's going to be x equals. And what's the distance from here to there?
5.
Yeah, it's also a again. So that distance is 5. That's the origin, 0, 0. So what would be the equation of your directrix?
X is -5.
Yeah, perfect. So you got your vertex, your focus, your directrix, and which way the parabola opens. Okay. Any question on that? Okay. All right, the next one we're going to look at, we're being given a parabola and we want to find the equation. What are the 3 letters that we have to figure out when we're working with a parabola?
A, H, and K.
Yep, A, H, and K. And I don't know if we wrote specifically H and K on the last problem, but H and K are the coordinates of the vertex. What's the coordinates of the vertex here?
The origin is 0, 0.
Yeah. So we're not going to need the h and the k, since they're both 0. What is a in this case?
2.
Yep, a is 2 because it's the distance between the center. I'm sorry, I keep calling it the center. The vertex and the focus. Okay, that's your a value. So a is 2. Now, let's say they ask you for the directrix in this one. What would be the equation of your directrix?
Y equals -2.
Y equals, so if the focus is 2 units up, the directrix is 2 units down, and it's horizontal. Yep. Okay, so now what we want to do is come up with the equation. There's 4 different equations for parabolas. So you've got, let's just kind of summarize them. 4ay, negative 4ay, y squared equals 4ax, and negative 4ax. All we have to do is figure out which way each one of those opens and then match it up to the one we have. And then fill a in as 2. Okay. Which way does the top one open?
It opens to the right.
Nope, we want to look at the 4, and then the y tells you that it's vertical.
Okay.
So it's a positive 4 vertical.
Up.
That would be up. How about a negative 4 with the vertical letter?
Down.
That's down. Okay, how about 4ax?
Right.
That's right. And negative 4ax?
Down. I mean, no, right. Left.
Left. Okay, so now, in our case, the parabola opens which way?
Up.
Up. So that's the equation that we want to use to describe it. And what are we going to fill in for a?
2.
2. So it's x squared equals 4 times 2y, or x squared equals
8y.
8y. Now, if you were going to type that in on your calculator to graph it, what letter would you need by itself?
Y.
Y. And how would you get the y by itself?
Divide the x squared by 8.
Yep. So you could write that as 1/8 x squared, or you could say x squared divided by 8. That's the same thing. So the reason I'm showing you that bottom one is because if you have a question that has you match up the graph with an equation, they might solve the equation for y. So you still do everything the way we learned using one of those formulas. But when you're done, you might have to isolate a letter to make it match up with what they have on the test. Okay? Any question on that?
No.
Okay. Okay, so this one, they want us to find the equation, but this time they have not given us a picture. So it might be helpful to make a sketch, and then we can start to figure out which way this thing is going to open. When you have a directrix of 3, what kind of line is that?
Parabola.
So no, when you graph your directrix, what kind of line? How would you graph x equals 3?
Straight line. Like a straight vertical line.
Vertical line
On the x is 3.
when x is 3. Yep. So you can have a vertical line right there. Now, based on having that line, we know the parabola can only open one of 2 ways now and not touch that line. What are the 2 ways it could open?
Left or right.
Right. It could either open to the left or it could open to the right. Now we got to narrow that down. Okay. Here is your vertex. Okay. If that's your vertex, which way does the parabola have to open? Yeah, it has to open left. If the parabola opened right in any way, it would be crossing our directrix, and we cannot do that. So it has to open to the left, something like that. And what what's the letter, we don't have to worry about H and K because that's at the origin. What's the letter we're going to have to figure out?
A.
Yes, we have to figure out A. In the picture, how do you recognize A? It's the,
It's the same amount as the directrix in terms of magnitude.
okay, so A is, how would you define it? It's the what?
It's the same length, but it's the opposite direction from the vertex.
Okay, so the distance from the vertex to the,
To the directrix.
directrix. Yep, that's one way we can define A. So what is A in this case?
3.
3. Okay. So now we need to fill that in, but we have to pick the correct equation. What's the equation of a parabola that opens to the left?
Y squared is negative 4ax.
4ax. And we're going to fill in what for A?
3.
3. And when you do that, what will it simplify to?
Y squared is negative 12x.
Yes. Now, that's how I've written it here. If they solved it for x, what would you do?
Divide y squared by negative 12.
Yep. So this is a possibility for how you could see it written on the test. They might solve it for the letter that is not squared. So negative 1/12 y squared equals x. Okay. Any question on that one?